In some ways, I think the way the GM job is set up in college right now is a harder job than even in the NBA. They're not only recruiting their own players back to them every year, but they have to scout every other player in Division I, Division II, and IAI, and they then have to have all these decisions made within a very, very short time frame when the portal opens and closes, and there's no collective bargaining agreement. There's no clear understanding of what a player's worth is. Everybody's operating under their own rules. It's a wild west. I honestly, I don't know how coaches are doing it.
One of the things that I think the colleges struggle with right now is just the lack of time to actually evaluate these guys. There is a character part of the evaluation, there's a fit part of the evaluation, and that is entirely separate from, is this player good enough to play in this league? I'm curious, like, any advice that you have for anybody trying to tackle this task? I mean, it seems like a pretty big mountain to climb. What would you tell somebody who's trying to do it for the first time?
I think that they have to have a very clear process. System and process is critical. The database is from the beginning is absolutely essential. They got to understand who their universe is, number one. Then they've got to clearly, with their coach, define exactly the system they're going to play and the type of players that they want. And that's both in terms of playing style, on-court character, and then off-court character, right? And then they've got to narrow that database down to that profile of players, and it's still a big number. And then they got to get heavily into scouting those players and diving into the tape. And then, I think a lot of it also is the intel. One of the things I've said to you, Austin, before is that we always talked about eyes, ears, and numbers. That's what we always talked about when we were building our team. So what did I see in the player? What did I hear about the player? And then what did the numbers tell us about the player? And then we sort of looked at it like a Venn diagram. And when there was that small section where they all crossed each other, we knew that was the perfect player for us. If you could get all three in your whole roster, then that's terrific, right? It's hard. You're not going to get all three all the time. So then that's when you get into a room and sit down and you hash it out and talk it out. And you want to find how passionate are your scouts about the player? How passionate is your coach about him fitting into your system? And then from an analytics standpoint, when you're talking to your analysts, how passionate are they that the numbers are right or wrong? And then from there, you got to hope you can reach some kind of collective decision. And you got to ask a lot of questions. If the numbers didn't match up, the first question I would ask was why? To our scouts, why aren't the numbers matching up what you're seeing? Let's talk about it. The last piece of the puzzle is the coach. He has to really look at what's most important to him. Players are human beings. They're not going to be great at everything. I always, chuckle when people say, oh, this guy's this, and this, but he doesn't do this. Well, yeah, he's human. He's not a robot. He's going to be perfect at everything, right? So you have to understand that. What are most important at that particular time within your roster construction that you need? And then if your coach is communicating clearly to your group, then usually you can come to a fairly unanimous decision on a player in terms of whether or not he's right for the program or not.
What were some key statistics or some key analytics that you guys looked at that maybe translated across like all of the places that you've been, or if you're open to sharing a little bit of secret sauce, like where some were really interesting versus not?
You got to realize in 2002, we were just getting started, right? No one knew anything about analytics. The evolution over the last 25 years has been remarkable. I was never of the belief that like the one number player ratings, really, I struggled with them. I loved looking at all the numbers and the advanced analytics, and we've gotten so much better at the advanced analytics and diving into not only the offensive stats, but more of a defensive look, which teams are still trying to figure out. What makes basketball difficult in terms of that analytics side, you've got 5 players playing together all the time. If one player makes a mistake, it impacts and breaks down the whole offense or the defense. Even though it's difficult, we're getting much, much better at singling out a player and offensively and now defensively, his impact on a team. One player he's always had an issue with because they weren't customized. I always thought it just depends on how you built the metric. I used to always argue about this with our analytics guys. Today, you're customizing it. You guys are customizing all that. And I think what's so critical is for teams to be able to define who they are. And they might change that year to year or every 2-3 years. So I would always ask our guys to do an analytics analysis of a player using metrics that we believe in, that we think are critical for the point guard position, and then give me a scouting opinion on it. And I tell our guys, I want to be able to read your reports and feel the player. Close my eyes and I know the player. I think that it changes and evolves all the time if teams are really good at it. And it's predicated on how the style of play and how you want to play.
In the pro game, these guys have full-blown infrastructures and they have analytics departments and they have front offices. Can you just maybe talk about the investments that these NBA franchises have put in and compare that to what you're seeing in colleges for the coaching staffs? I know it's not comparable, but more so to maybe just give some of these coaches a little bit of sense of relief.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how coaches are doing it. Before we talk about the basketball side of it, dealing with the boosters, raising NIL money, getting out in the community, selling the program, and then they got to come back and build their team every year. And there is the investment that every coach has in trying to build the culture of this program and then tie these kids together. If you have a player for 4 or 5 years and you have a group of them, then you've got time. But when you're looking at it, you get them in June, and then all of a sudden in November, they're playing games and they've got to play together and commit to each other. And by the way, players have to assume roles just like they do in the league, right? They're not really ready to do that. It's so difficult. And that's without talking about all the scouting. I think universities are starting to identify it. I understand it's a lot of money to invest. So they're going to have to figure out how to take a budget and figure out how to allocate the dollars where they can have some scouts and some recruiting coordinators and NIL people. And in particular, I think there should be a role under the general manager who's responsible for going out for NIL dollars with the corporations and so forth. The general manager, I don't think has time for that. He can come in and help sell it and close deals, but to go out and try to raise deals, I just think they're asking them to do too much. They're setting them up for failure. And today, that's the issue with coaches. I've seen a lot of coaches in college where they're just grabbing players because they don't have enough time. And if they say no to a player, he's going to the next program. So for them to have a plan in place, and it's got to be in place well before portal opens, to be able to stick to that plan, they have to have had a system and a process in place, and they have to drive that internally every day to make sure that they're getting to where they want to be.
What do you feel like your biggest learning curve was coming from being an agent to transitioning to a front office role?
Number one was really understanding the game. I thought I did, but I really didn't. Then understanding all of the different dynamics that a front office, a president, or a general manager is dealing with. There's so many stakeholders, from your owner to your coach to players to their agents to the family. So really understanding all those dynamics and then learning how to be a leader. The position is really a leadership position. I could always hire great scouts. I could hire great analytics people. I could hire great sports performance people. But the position as a leader, you can't hire that. You've got to be a great leader. And then you got to live it every single day. People talk about culture, but culture is a living organism that changes every day. When you're really, really successful, you're living whatever that culture is that you've instilled every single day. And there's buy-in. There's buy-in from everybody. People that are taking care of your facility, to your sports performance people, to your players, to the coaches, even your agents. I think when you have total alignment and communication, we've had great success. When there were times that we struggled, which luckily, fortunately, didn't have a lot of that, we probably weren't as well aligned as we needed to be between our coaching staff and our front office. We needed to do a better job of that. We needed to communicate better.
It is actually pretty fascinating and wild to see the lack of structure that does exist for some of these programs.
It's all new. It's a wild west. There's no collective bargaining. And look, I don't think it's the university's fault. It's just all changed. So they're trying to react and catch up. And some universities have reacted a little quicker, than others, but everybody's trying to figure it out.